Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, December 20th, 2021. We are certainly getting towards the end of the year, and I guess, I guess it's Christmas week, right? Christmas falls on a weekend this year, which, I don't know. I mean, the kids are off from school, but, I don't know. It somehow feels like it's something of a letdown. Like, I like it when the holiday falls in the middle of the week, and then you get a weekday off, but I guess it doesn't make a great deal of difference to me, and the kids are off either way, but I don't know, there's something fun about interrupting the week with the day off, or at least the day that everybody else takes off, and I take it off too, so what the hell, it's fun and enjoyable and something, but on a Saturday, it feels like, well, you know, it's like having your birthday on Christmas, I guess, feels for people who have that going on and who has kids feel like I didn't get twice as many presents like I was supposed to, spaced out throughout the year. It's true. I know kids that feel that way. So, you know, or it could just be one giant fun party, but I don't know. I guess when you're a kid, getting the presents is the fun part anyway. So I can sympathize with you kids. Anyway, so yeah, the holiday falls on Saturday, and that means that the same thing happens with New Year's. And, it'll feel weird a little bit. But time off, that's good. I didn't have to get anybody to the bus today. That's fine. The other news is, of course, that I got my booster. So if I feel crappy during the day, that is Greg's fault. He told me to go and get one of these things. I went and got it. But no, actually, my report for you is that my reaction to the booster was pretty much the same as my reaction to the other two shots. I expected something, and I prepared for the worst, but then nothing happened. So that's good, although it always makes me worry, like, well, did they give me the right stuff or not? But I got it from a different place. So something of an experience, finally finding a appointment, and then showing up, and basically the appointment was worthless. I would say, I don't know, for around here, all the appointments were booking up quickly. None of the times were convenient, and all the sites said, you must book an appointment, you must book an appointment. So I booked one, and I found one like Saturday night. On Saturday night, I found one for Sunday morning, is what I mean. And, you know, everybody else was like, well, maybe next week, or maybe after New Year's, or something like that in terms of appointments. But a local Safeway supermarket pharmacy had one lone 11 a.m. Sunday appointment, just sitting out there with nothing else. So I took that one, and I got up and I went over there, and the place was not jammed, but there was a lot of people there. And it turns out everybody there was there as walk-ins, and I talked to the guy behind the counter because I was a reporter or something all of a sudden, and I asked him about it, and all these people walk-ins, because I had made my appointment. And I was starting to wonder how long was I going to have to wait to have my appointment fulfilled. And it turns out that they had said, look, we're just taking all comers today. From 10 to 5, walk-ins, whatever, appointment, whatever. We're just giving a shot to as many people as we can, which is a good thing and the right thing to do, particularly, for busy people who have been fumbling around trying to get appointments. And this particular part of town, very heavily English as a second language, a various second language area. A lot of heavily Asian, heavily Hispanic, and at least a few people with their kids with them, not to get vaccinated, but to translate for them. And so I thought, all right, well, great. The message is getting out in whatever language everybody here is speaking, Spanish or one of the various Asian languages that I can't identify necessarily. And they know that they're supposed to be here getting the boosters, but it is creating something of an issue for them. I think part of the issue is getting the appointments because, you know, some places have some instructions online in Spanish, but you don't see much in the way of Asian languages instruction online. And, if they just couldn't figure it out or just didn't have the time to figure it out, or just didn't know what their schedules were going to be like because they work irregular hours, It was great that they could walk in and get it. It wasn't so great necessarily that I basically could have skipped the whole run around looking for appointments thing and just walked in. But then I probably wouldn't have walked into this particular Safeway either. So anyway, it all worked out. I got the booster. I feel okay. Nothing wrong so far. So that's good news. I imagine most people that I heard from who said, well, I had a reaction to the first couple of shots, had a reaction to the third shot, and people who didn't have reactions to the first two shots didn't have a reaction to the third one, because I guess it's the same stuff, so you should pretty much expect the same, and that's good. So I don't know, if you're one of the lucky people that didn't have much of a reaction to the shots and you're wondering or waiting or thinking, well, should I schedule it for a day when I can take off, go ahead and do that. But yeah, you'll probably have the same reaction as you did last time. If you need the time, take the time. And a lot of places are just basically, it seems like the practice is they're begging everybody to get appointments so that they have some idea of how many people are coming and can spread them out during the day, but that people are walking in and asking for it, and they say, well, if you'll sit and wait, it could be 15 minutes, it could be an hour, but we'll give you a shot. And all right, that's good. People are taking it. It's getting into arms, and that's good news, and especially that it's getting into the arms of people we might not be able to reach in English. That's a nice anecdote to throw in there as well. Greg Dworkin has reached us in English, not so far, but now's the time where we turn things over to him and find out if he's still speaking the same language as he was last time we spoke. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. Well, you know,
Pressure
I'm
was
from
on
New
to
York,
come up
so
with another
English is
language.
a second language. And I was
Okay.
very pleased to hear that you went to essentially a Scottish Highlands area where English
Yeah.
is also a second language.
Yes, basically, yeah, the Scottish Highlands Safeway.
Not that you
Here.
could understand a word they say in Scottish, but, you know,
It
when
was
they
really
switch to
something.
English, sometimes they can.
And yeah, the guy was kind of overwhelmed. He was one guy behind the counter, and he was doing all the paperwork and then coming out and giving shots to all the people he'd done paperwork with.
Which is why you make appointments. It's not for
Yeah.
you, it's for them.
And yeah, he was very flustered, and you know, I was the first person who had spoken to him in English for a while, except for the kids of some of the people who came in, and he was very relieved to be able to have a conversation about what was going on, and that enabled me to figure out
Yeah,
what was
because
going on.
this whole you know, giving you the shot and getting you out goes faster.
Yeah.
So that's you know, it's
I
good
was
to
able
know
to help
that people
people
are
figure out
lining
to
up.
sit
Everybody's
down and,
lining
you know.
up.
Yeah, it was also a different experience, by the way. I will say the other places where they give you the shot and they say, sit here, wait for 15 minutes, see if you have any reaction. At the ESL Safeway, they just like, get out of here. Just leave.
Yeah, we don't
get
have
your
room.
shot. Yeah, so it's totally different experience for, you know, well, probably certainly the English as a second language cohort, somewhat lower income cohort. Not the, you know, white glove treatment that we got elsewhere in the nice part of town where they had a whole row of seats for us to sit. Yeah, it was interesting. So, yeah, you know, it's a chore for the people to get their injections. They're standing around in the supermarket, you know, hoping their masks work while they're waiting. So
Yeah, pretty much. You know, and that one of the many, many reasons why when people talk about, well, the unvaccinated,
yeah,
it's a very mixed
Yeah, you
group of
bastards.
people. It isn't just people who are Trumpers who say, I'm doing this as a political statement. You know, if
Yeah.
you go back and look at who are the unvaccinated, you have to start with, well, anybody under 5,
yes,
about
right.
2/3 of children,
Stupid Trump
you know,
kids.
pregnant and thinking they're
Stupid
pregnant and maybe
Trumper
lactating women.
kids.
I mean, these are people who don't have the vaccine. And
Yeah,
some can't,
very
some
many
won't.
of them.
There's communities which have learned through Tuskegee and other things to be vaccine hesitant.
Yes, that's true.
And
too.
so there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. But the bottom line here is that we have to up our vaccine game and consider that what you did is you completed your primary series.
Yes, at long
You,
last.
you didn't get boosted. You just got your primary series, and now you're
Right.
vaccinated.
But I had to press the button that said booster for my sign-up.
Well, they
Change
haven't
that.
updated the website
Right.
any more than they've updated the concept of appointments.
Right. It's not working great. But, you know, it was nice that they were just like, yeah, we have an appointment thing, but if you come in here and say you want it, if you're here before 5, we'll get you.
Which is good thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's that. There's a whole lot going on the Omicron front. It was very weird following reporters on Twitter
They are weird people.
who went from, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday, to why you people are freaking out about the Omnicold.
Okay.
To by Sunday, yesterday, looking at Twitter feeds from people like Chris Saliza saying, oh my gosh, it's finally hitting me that this is really serious. I can't believe it. Now I know people who have it.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of weird, wasn't it? Or they...
Hello,
they
Mr. Privilege. So it turns out it
their Broadway
penetrated
show
the
was
bubble and now it's real, so now you have to take it seriously?
Yeah, that's basically it. But you've always told us that, that it was the editor's issue, right? This is what happened to the editor on the way to work. Well, my Broadway show got canceled. So
right, exactly.
I'm angry, and oh my gosh, it's everywhere. Or I have it, and I don't feel terrible, but I don't feel good.
Well, the thing is, I wasn't supposed to have it.
Right,
I was able to avoid it all this time, and now with this Omicron being so infectious, apparently I can't avoid it.
Yeah, well, that's what it changed my view of things over the course of the week. Like, I really need to make a priority. Like, okay, I can't go do this thing. I might have to just wait for a shot. I got to get one in here, and I got to make sure that we're stocked. I have this weird feeling. I don't, it's not necessarily being borne out yet, but this might be the one that disrupts supply, if not the overseas supply chain, then just, getting people into work and making things operate. This is I'm worried that this will be like what I thought might happen in March of 2020, not so much with, illness and death as just disruption. People sick and a lot of people out of work. And that means nothing on the, I can't get this thing or I can't get an appointment for that. And nobody will, put in the insulation in my house or whatever.
That being the case, it's about time as far as the booster full series goes, you adjust your demand.
Yeah.
Get it done. So glad you did. So it's not easy everywhere. My son is in from the West Coast for the holidays.
Okay.
And he's not boosted yet. He's getting his booster tomorrow.
Right.
Because from the West Coast, from San Francisco, from Berkeley, he literally could not get an appointment, and they weren't doing walk-ins.
Yeah.
But from Berkeley, he could make an appointment at a Connecticut place.
Yeah.
So he's got an appointment tomorrow night in his local CVS.
Yeah, that's another thing too, right? I was telling some of the people in the Safeway if they wanted an appointment, they could go online. It was real easy, and then realizing it's not that easy necessarily.
Depends where you live. I mean, it wasn't a question of, you have to wait or it's in an inconvenient place. You literally couldn't get an appointment because the line is too long.
Yeah, or have you got
which is encouraging, but the way it is. So we have two big stories, of course, and there are only two stories today. There's the Omicron version of the COVID pandemic, and there's the Joe Manchin story.
Joe McCron.
So let's do the pandemic since we started with that.
Okay.
And there's one part about the pandemic I do not want to forget in talking about everything else, and that is the, for example, NBC News piece. Trump White House made deliberate efforts to undermine COVID response, report says. The White House repeatedly overruled public health and testing guidance from the nation's top infectious disease experts and silenced officials, the report found.
Yes.
So this is a report prepared by the House Select Subcommittee investigating the nation's COVID response. Says the White House repeatedly overruled public health and testing guidance by the nation's ID experts and silenced officials because they wanted to promote then-President Trump's political agenda. You may think it's old news. I don't care about that. When can I get my appointment? But it's still a big deal. Deborah Birx testified the White House could have reduced COVID deaths by 30 to 40%, but didn't. And then there was an actual email, I think, along the lines of Birx refusing to go along with the Scott Atlas, just let everybody get herd immunity stuff.
Okay, well, that's good. She's writing there. That's good for her.
Birx also told the panel that Atlas and other Trump officials purposely weakened CDC's coronavirus testing guidance.
Great.
In August of 2020 to obscure how rapidly the virus was spreading across the country.
Thank you.
The altered guidance recommended asymptomatic people didn't need to get tested, advice that was contrary to consensus science-based recommendations. Birx stated these changes were made specifically to reduce the amount of testing being conducted. But Trump was, upfront about this and said he was doing stuff like this, and so like it wasn't a scandal. Like he said, okay, all those people on that cruise ship that are sick, I don't want them in this country. It'll count.
Yeah. I told my people to slow down the testing. And I told you that I told my people that. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's up front. I mean, it's a confession of murder.
Yes,
But okay.
So it matters. So, that happened, and I don't want to forget about it. And so struggling with what to do about COVID isn't new. The White House is struggling with it. They're just being, a bit more upfront and honest about what they're doing. Their press briefing that just came out like 2 days ago said, for example, and he's got an address about it tomorrow to the country, as we've explained in prior briefings, the Omicron variant is more transmissible, and our medical experts anticipate it'll lead to a rise in cases.
Okay, that's
so they're telling us that up front. But unlike last winter, we now have the power to protect ourselves. Mm-hmm. Our vaccines work against Omicron, especially for people who get booster shots when they're eligible. That would be you.
Yeah, but they're not boosters.
If you are vaccinated, you could test positive, but if you do get COVID, your case will likely be asymptomatic or mild.
That's what they say.
Now, here's the important part.
Yeah.
We are intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. You've done the right thing, and we will get through this. So this message for all these people, I did all the right thing, and they're shutting down anyway. No. Actually, they're not shutting down. They're telling you that they don't want to shut down. Shutting down is bad. Shutting down probably lost Democrats a lot of votes in the 2020 election, by the way. It's still my contention, and nothing that I've learned since we discussed this on the show, and that was part of the reason why South Texas did what it did. I haven't changed my mind on that. The more I know, the more I think that was correct. We are intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. You've done the right thing. For the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm.
Yeah, right.
That's clear. They're taking the Jared Polis approach.
Okay.
Saying, look, you guys need to get vaccinated. And if you don't get vaccinated, it's on you. It's not on us.
I mean,
you.
I don't know who else to blame for not getting vaccinated, certainly.
Well, it's not a question of blame. It's a question of accurately pointing out that you're the problem.
Okay. What if I want to blame somebody?
Well, you can blame whoever you want.
All right.
I blame Scott Atlas. So our message to every American is clear. They say there's action you can take to protect yourself and your family. Wear a mask in public indoor settings. And by the way, if you can, upgrade it to an N95. Mm-hmm. Get vaccinated. Get your kids vaccinated. Get a booster shot when you're eligible. And they should add, because it's now considered the full series, and just say it. All right. They should say, COVID is airborne, which is why we do this mask thing.
Kind of getting around to that. Yeah, all right.
There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I saw somebody reiterating that maybe we needed to have some sort of, I don't know, somebody was freaking out with it being airborne. Like, doesn't that mean, especially if you're working in, I guess in a hospital setting, maybe the face shields I know have been big and still working there, but maybe goggles is that an issue? Can an airborne virus?
Yes, it can get in your eyes, and people do wear face shields and goggles.
Yeah, so all right. I mean, I don't know if that's not gonna catch on for the general public. I think
no, and the general public doesn't need to do that.
Okay,
but,
then fine.
The general public does need to wear masks, and it is airborne. And I said on Twitter over the weekend, here's more evidence that it's airborne, because there was, for example, a discussion about somebody in Hong Kong in a hotel who caught the virus from the guy across the hall.
Right.
Okay, and I said it's airborne, and people,
or the two guys
people I know, people, good,
telling us something.
Wonderful people, had just said we knew that. Well,
yes.
the royal you knew that, but schools are still doing deep cleaning, and the governor of South Dakota had a PSA saying wash your hands. What good is that?
I mean, you should wash your hands, but I mean, maybe that was just generally like you're very dirty person. No, because
she was pressed on. What about the mask? What about the vaccine? Well, it's really important to wash your hands.
It's good to wash your hands.
Yeah, look, it's good to take a shower, whether you need it or not.
Right,
but still.
Yeah, no, the deep cleaning thing I assume is just happening because governors' friends have cleaning companies or something. I don't know.
It's performance art.
Yeah, it's right.
So you could say you did something, but to actually say it, is important.
Okay.
I just realized that it's airborne. Maybe I really should put my mask over my nose.
Yeah, I don't know why that took so long. I don't know why that was controversial.
Why did it take Chris Eliza so long to realize that people actually get sick from this? Because when you're in a bubble, you simply don't want to pay attention. It was really, I read it. It was really a remarkable I mean, I have read it, but I ought to read it while we're doing this,
Read
while
it.
we're broadcasting, because it's really remarkable, indictment.
Yeah.
I think is the only way to look at it. But in any case,
Okay.
lots of other tweets to read too. This is from Emily Landon. There's more than one way to die from COVID. If hospitals are full or understaffed, a treatable illness or emergency may not get care in time. There's just as much a COVID-related death as the poor souls dying of misinformation in the ICU. So that all is true.
All right, I see what they mean. I mean, dead is dead, but I
Dead is dead.
got it. Different paths.
Right.
Oh,
So
all
here's
the people
a
who asked,
supposed thing. Might as well just go through it. It's
or-
not that long. I've been thinking a lot about why the latest surge has hit me so hard, and I think it's because I've been fooling myself to some extent for the last 18 months.
Yes.
I told myself the reason to get vaccinated and boosted was to avoid serious illness and to keep myself from passing the virus along to my mom and other vulnerable people. That's what all the experts said. But deep down, I think I believe that being vaccinated and boosted would keep me from getting COVID at all.
Okay.
Well, that's important. We talked about this on the show. The public health people say get it so you don't wind up in the hospital. Regular people say get the vaccine because I don't want to get sick.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of the rollout of the third shot, that was a big
And there
issue.
was never a consensus about that, and we talked ad nauseum about it on the show. But it's true that that's the way people think about it.
Sure.
Why? He says, not sure, honestly, but I spent the better part of a year waiting for a vaccine and doing everything I could to keep my family from getting the virus. It's just hard to turn that switch off. I think that's why yesterday, when it felt like every person I knew was either being diagnosed with COVID or had been exposed to it, it hit me so hard. Because the reality is, and we're talking about people like, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, they're positive yesterday.
Yes.
Because the reality is, and has always been, even if I didn't realize it, that the vaccines don't really prevent you from getting the virus. At least they don't guarantee it won't happen. And that's a huge distinction there.
Yes.
They significantly lessen the idea that you're going to get it, but they don't make you virus proof. They never did.
That's right.
Flu shots don't. This doesn't. It's a virus. My friend, C. Warzel, described the view of many people he knew as chill about the reality that lots and lots of us are going to get COVID at some point. I'm not in the chill stage, but at least I'm realizing how badly I miscalculated what the vaccine means and what it's supposed to do. My work now is getting used to that reality. I realize I'm way behind lots of other people, but you got to start somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, I just
That's
wonder
fine.
what's
So,
being
if
paid
you want to
attention
downplay it because it makes you feel better about going to work, that's fine, but the virus doesn't care. And, it's pretty infectious. It turns out that this Omicron variant is extremely infectious to the point where even if you've been vaccinated and boosted, we talked about the public health folks who went from California to, I think it was Wisconsin for a wedding and brought it all back to California.
Yeah. Right.
On the other hand, there's still a lot of mixed messages about just how severe it is. Gauteng's Omicron wave is already peaking. Why? Nice review of this in New York Magazine by David Wallace Wells, interviewing Trevor Bedford, one of the true experts in the country, not a Twitter expert who anoints himself because they did the research, but a true expert who actually does research. Okay, so not a phenomenon particularly to Omicron. At earlier stages of the pandemic, sometimes less dramatic ways, other waves have crested and declined, but the testing in South Africa says it's a really sharp spike, goes up, goes down.
Okay.
And so Wallace Wells is asking the expert, Trevor Bedford, Seattle's Fred Hutchinson Center Research Center, about how to make sense of the phenomenon and how comfortably we can count on the Omicron waves taking similar turn here.
And
why do you think it's happening this way? And Trevor Bedford says there's about 5 different reasons for it, and they're not mutually exclusive. So, for example, there's a simple limit to testing capacity. Right? If everybody wants to get a vaccine and they all show up at your pharmacy or your Safeway, there isn't room for everybody.
Yeah, not this one.
So not everybody's going to get one. If everybody wants to get tested, but there isn't testing capacity, not everybody's going to get tested. So you're going to miss a lot of tests. And in the beginning, when the demand wasn't that much, maybe 1 out of every 10 people actually have the virus gets tested for it. But if it's really ubiquitous and you run out of tests, maybe 1 out of 50. So when the tests come back saying, well, there's not as much as there was last week, you don't exactly know what that means yet.
True. Yeah.
Not if everybody still seems to be sick around you.
Yeah, and with lines being what they are at a lot of testing sites, I'm sure a lot of people turned around and went home. Or the other thing I witnessed, lots of people in the pharmacies buying home tests.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But those tests don't get reported. You know what to do, which is great. Don't hang around with other people and give them the virus. But does the county know that you're sick? No, not unless you tell them.
Right. Exactly. So there's a lot of that going on. And then there's other things that are going on that say, look, if you're trying to get an idea of how Omicron's going to hit here, you have to keep in mind there's an incredible age skew in terms of mortality risk. Right? The older you are, the more vulnerable you are. But we also have an age skew in terms of vaccination because the older people tend to get vaccinated, and let's say the 30 to 50-year-olds who are still at risk don't get vaccinated, and so we wind up seeing all of these folks in the hospital who were unvaccinated.
Yep.
Okay. And so what happens? Our case fatality rate in this country, we had a drop in March and April because we got our older folks vaccinated.
Yes.
And then it goes back up because some of the younger people then start getting sick as it spreads. And, if you get enough of them sick, they're going to wind up in the hospital too.
Yeah, and they go out and socialize a lot more than the old people too.
So when you overload the system with cases, the so-called less risk suddenly become part of the equation, and that's what's happening here.
Yeah, well, every time we vaccinated a younger and younger cohort, someone younger than that would get it next. Virus.
When we come back, we'll talk about severity because that's a huge part of this too.
Okay, let's do that.
Hi everyone, it's me, Gil, minimal contributor to content but regular contributor to funding for Kagro in the morning. Let's change things up from David's so very tired plea for your contributions with a plea of my own. If you want to add your voice to the show, do it. Record your own segment using your favorite recording device and send it to David. Read an article and give your opinion. Write your own essay and read that. The sky's the limit. Well, not really. Try to keep it relatively short so David doesn't have to stress about cutting it and hurting your feelings. Join the hallowed ranks of Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter and be part of this somewhat witty deep dive into political topics with unnecessary censoring. Lend your voice to the show by sending it to kagrox@gmail.com. KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. That's another topic for us to discuss, perhaps. It could be today, could be another day, but a lot of
so the severity thing.
Yes, severity.
I mean, you can have this and not feel sick. And nobody has a really good read on severity. And the reason is there's a difference between exposing the virus to somebody who's never been vaccinated and never been sick. And there's a lot of people like that in this country.
Yeah.
And those who either had the virus once, maybe within 6 months, different category than those who had the virus, but it's been more than 6 months. Mm-hmm. Those who have had a vaccine, maybe one, maybe two. It turns out CDC was overestimating the number of people who have had two, let alone three, which is, of course, quote, the full series, end quote.
Yes.
So all that matters. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you hear these reports about, well, we're seeing a lot of cases, but not a lot of people are winding up in the hospital. People are winding up in the hospital, but less so. So it does appear that for whatever reason, it appears to functionally act less severe. That is to say, because so many people in the U.S. have been exposed one way or another, it doesn't really matter whether it's less severe because the virus is intrinsically less severe or it's less severe for the population because so much of the population has been exposed. Okay? So when you're talking about intrinsic severity, it doesn't really matter, Trevor Bedford says. It's going to be less severe either because of immunity or intrinsic severity or both. What matters much more is how reduced is it? People are arguing about these factors like if it's intrinsically less severe, that means we don't need to worry about it. That's not true. Is it 30% less severe? Is it 30 times less severe? The difference between those things is enormous.
Well, sure.
So the scale of reduction is much more important than the mechanism, and we don't know that yet.
Okay.
So as long as it appears to be less severe, that's good. But as long as so many people are exposed, that's bad. And if it winds up putting pressure on the hospital, as it appears that it is in places like, for example, England, then you have to keep a very close eye and be careful.
Okay.
For example, Jorge Caballero, who's following this stuff, says Omicron is not milder than Delta for unvaccinated people. UK analysis of 15,087 cases found that severity of symptoms is on the par with Delta if you've never been vaccinated.
Okay.
Hospitalization and asymptomatic infection indicators were not significantly associated with Omicron infection, but we're not sure. Again, we'll need more cases. We're all hoping it's milder. We don't know that. So that's part of the deal. Okay, so here's some experts about what happens next. Tom Frieden says, tidal wave of Omicron will hit the U.S. and other countries at the worst possible time, holidays. Health systems strained already from Delta. Flu starting. Many people feeling pandemic fatigue. Perfect storm. If we get our response right, COVID won't dominate 2022.
Oh, well.
It already made up 3% of COVID in the U.S. on December 11th, probably more than that because the testing that we have is inadequate. Okay, the proportion's significantly higher now because it doubles every 2 to 3 days. New York City just spiked hugely up. The Omicron signature, the O signature.
Oh, it's a new word.
Is a spike that goes directly up. And I'll give you a picture of what that looks like.
Is it a line that goes up?
It's a line that goes up. You can see it all the way to the right of that picture.
I can probably envision that. Okay, yeah. It looks like if you're watching the movie about the earthquakes and they're just looking at the little thing, and all of a sudden, oh, there goes an earthquake. Yeah,
there goes an earthquake. Exactly. But then it comes down fairly quickly, too. Again, that may be a question of testing. So there's no way COVID spread this fast unless it's riding roughshod over immunity from vaccination and prior infection. We still don't know how well immunity protects from severe illness, and that'll take a couple more weeks to figure that out.
But it's looking
so every population is unique. Okay.
All right.
And remember, UK saw a surge of cases and relatively few deaths until they didn't. And the US saw a surge of cases and a lot of deaths.
Yeah,
because we have vaccine refuseniks, which are different than vaccine hesitant.
Right.
All right. So the bottom line, Omicron's still COVID. It's still capable of doing damage. It's still capable of overwhelming our health systems. It's shaping up to be a hard winter, so get vaccinated and boosted. And try to keep the schools open in January and February.
Right, unless you close them for homeschooling, because that was always your goal in the first place.
Consider testing before gathering indoors with friends and family you don't live with. That's why those things were on the shelf, but now they're gone.
All right.
Boost, mask, shield. Every single nursing home resident and staff member should be boosted. That's where those vaccine mandates come in. The New York State ones were validated by the Supreme Court. That is to say, you can order healthcare workers to get vaccinated.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court said, well, we're not taking this case. Not in the middle of an exploding Omicron thing anyway. Right. Maybe we'll take it later and say it was wrong, but for right now, we're staying in our bubble.
Yeah, smart too, because
right. This is Jay Varma writing today in the New York Times what our Omicron future should look like. It looks a lot like what Joseph Allen in the Washington Post last week said. Cut your self quarantine to 5 days from 10. Get yourself tested. Test and stay. That is to say, if you're negative, you can stay.
Stay.
Okay. Up your mask game to N95s.
Up your mask.
Yeah, well, up yours.
That's what I thought you're telling me.
I got your mask right here, as we say in New York.
I do have it here.
States must activate emergency management systems now, even before Omicron surges in the area.
Yes,
and,
once again, please do it ahead of time.
Public health officials need to recognize that both COVID infections and deaths are inevitable, and that even the most rudimentary measures infringe on people's liberties, but you got to do some things anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
So right
Okay.
now, because there's so much fatigue, protection is unfortunately mostly an individual responsibility. But encourage those responsibilities. I mean, the best single thing, if you can't reach somebody, by talking about why it's important to keep your local hospital open, talk to their families. Keep doing it, but, people tend to get convinced to get the vaccine when their family members put pressure on them. It doesn't usually do any good for Biden to do it.
All right. Unless he's in your family.
Right.
A large family.
If he talks to your family, that's sort of good.
Right.
So,
That's the thing you can do, too, is if you are trying to talk to your family. So you can
address the nation, for example, like he's going to do tomorrow.
Yeah. If you happen to be nearby and your family is hesitant, he will ask for your cell phone and call your family for you if you think that will work.
Right.
Ask him to do it.
So if you order test kits online or if you buy test kits, that's good. They're pricey. Not everybody could afford them.
Yep.
The president should help with that. He should get tests to everybody. He should, in my view, invoke the Defense Production Act and send everybody a N95 and a test kit.
I agree, and it's unfortunate that was the biggest flub of the last 2 weeks was, I guess that came up in the press conference, and Jen Psaki, I guess, was still in burn it all down defense mode,
right?
And didn't realize that she was getting, I think, a friendly leading question and could have responded.
But they haven't done it, and that's a genuine, legitimate criticism of what they're doing.
Yeah, that was not good, and they haven't lived that down, and it's going to bother them. But I wondered whether that drove the really strong response last night. Or was it last night or during the day?
It was on the 17th.
Okay. I heard about last night then. Yeah, and I hope, that would be fine if they're trying to make good on, we made a mistake there. We really going to have to come out stronger and say our position more aggressively and show people that we're going to come out and do something big and real and hold people responsible for their actions too.
Well, I'm sure they have heard from people who say, look, we've done everything right. We've been responsible. Now we're mad because all these other people aren't. But I'm sure they also heard from the Crystal Lizzes of the world who said, we've been responsible. We've done everything right. And now we're scared.
Yeah.
And both of those are real, and so they have heard that, and hopefully tomorrow they will address that, adjust their thinking to cover that. Mm-hmm. But it means being more aggressive and changing some of the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
And so we'll hear about whether or not they do that. So speaking of adjustment, the other big story, which we certainly should mention, isn't just that Joe Manchin still is not a yes on Build Back Better. It's that he went on Fox News to tell everybody that he was a no. He didn't tell Biden.
Because he's chicken.
His staff called Biden because he's chicken.
Yeah.
But he went on Fox News to say no. So what does that mean? Well, statement from Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who's up the snark game. This is on December 19th. Senator Manchin's comments this morning on Fox are at odds with his discussion this week with the president, with White House staff, and with his own public utterances. In other words, Joe, you're lying.
Yeah, that's the word.
You lied to us. You lied to everybody who asked you about this. Weeks ago, Psaki said Senator Manchin committed to the president at his home in Wilmington to support the Build Back Better framework that the president then subsequently announced. Senator Manchin pledged repeatedly to negotiate finalizing that in good faith. Or as Steve Dennis, the congressional reporter, puts it, the way bills generally go in Congress is no, yes to framework, no, yes to rule, no.
Yeah.
And then the final one is either yes or no, and that's the one that counts.
Right.
Which you can't get to until you do the other things, yes to framework, yes to rule.
Right, yes. I mean, no, for now.
I mean, that's
later.
just, that's as clear as the debt ceiling where Republicans voted yes so that they could vote no.
Yeah.
And it was just so clearly, blindingly obvious that they were voting yes to vote no that nobody covered it.
Yeah, and then, of course, it was used
it should have been covered exactly that way. Republicans today voted no after voting yes so that they could vote no today.
That would have helped a great deal because I did notice a very annoying thing over the weekend. Senator Mark Warner, tweeting out, and joined by others, but I mean, others you can say maybe they don't quite grasp what was going on, but you were hoping that Mark Warner understood it a little bit better, tweeting out, "Hey, if we can change the rules and get rid of the filibuster for the debt ceiling, why can't we do it for voting rights?" And I mean,
and he's right. And so this is part of the equation. And
not as a senator, he's not.
I get that everybody who thinks something about Joe Manchin has been validated by what just happened.
Well, sure.
Right? If you hate him,
all like to
validated. If you think that he's playing a three-dimensional chess game where this gives him some leeway to do what Mark Warner just suggested, well, maybe he'll be validated. You'll see. But there's nothing about this that says that can't happen.
You might as well go and claim correctness.
Right? For those who remember LBJ and the games that the Senate used to play then, this is what the statement wink and a nod, and that's how things work in the Senate really means. What it means is this a situation where Sinema now gets to vote yes, but Manchin is the no on Build Back Better, so they both get what they want, which is it doesn't pass. Then they switch, and Manchin votes yes on getting rid of the filibuster for voting rights, but Sinema votes no. And so don't yell at Manchin. I did what I was supposed to, but they already knew this was coming, and so they both get the posture.
That could be.
And you can't blame either one of them for both.
Well, no, but
that's what wink and nod means.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, that I hadn't thought about, but yeah, very likely. Sure. I don't know
when you think about it, it's likely. But the point is, you can't tell on the surface what this really means. So Schumer, because everybody likes the posture in the Senate, you just don't know. And Schumer says, well, we're voting on it anyway.
Okay. That's the way to figure out whether it's posturing.
And we'll make them in public, do what they need to do and say what they need to say. And we'll do the same with voting rights.
Yeah. I mean, I think they will do what they say they were going to do, but...
Probably, but, is there still room for negotiation? On the one hand, if Manchin doesn't like specific things, and again, the other way, yet another different way to say, okay, I was right about Manchin, is to step back and say, look, he's a conservative Dem from a coal state, and he's pro-coal, and coal put him in business, and so he's anti-environment, anti-energy changes. He just is. That's who he is.
Yes.
And if you take those things out of the bill, he'll vote yes.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I guess
but
so.
If you take those things out of the bill, it's a much weaker bill.
True.
So why don't you just take these things out and say, okay, well, why don't we vote for this? Why don't we vote for this? And why don't we vote for this? Well, you can't do 3 votes because you only get reconciliation once.
Yeah, I guess.
So you got to do a bill that has the 3 things that aren't energy, because that's what Manchin has said. I want 3 things paid for 10 years. I don't want a bunch of things paid for 5 years. And how do we know this? I think that was it could have been one of the things that he signed a letter with Schumer agreeing about it. I'm not sure. I can't even remember what's in that letter.
Yeah,
but he was in writing saying, I want specific things. And he will claim,
that's true.
I've been saying all along, I want these specific things.
Yeah, we ought to dig up that letter.
And you haven't given them to me yet. I want 3 things for 10 years because it's smoke and mirrors to say, well, it will go away so it doesn't count. Well, he's probably right about that.
Okay.
So again, whatever you think of Manchin, whatever he just did is validated. The thing is, you don't really know how this ends, so you don't know how to put the whole thing in perspective yet.
Okay, maybe. All right.
I mean, there's nothing good about it. Don't get me wrong. It's embarrassing. It splits the party. You know it splits the party because one of the interesting things that people have feared is that, okay, now you're going to turn around and bash lefties and blame the progressives. That's not what's going on. The people who are most upset about this are the moderates. Right? This is Representative Spanberger, our favorite Virginia example. But after months of negotiations, one Democratic U.S. Senator has now summarily walked away from productive negotiations. That's unacceptable. We can't act like this moment is the end. Children, families, and the future of our planet are counting on us, said Spanberger. And Chris Coons and Josh Gottheimer and a lot of the other centrists have basically said the same thing. So it's like everybody's mad at Manchin today. But the problem for us is we just never know how much of this is performative.
Yes, sure. Okay. Well, there's only one way to find out, I guess, and that's to hold those votes. So that makes sense that would come next. Right.
So that is what's going to come next. And then you're going to see a whole bunch of dumb stuff about Manchin. Like this one is in the New Republic. Okay. Does Joe Manchin know that Build Back Better would extend vital aid for sick coal miners?
No.
That's
He
the
doesn't know
headline.
that.
The Black
Sure.
Lung Disability Trust Fund is in danger of insolvency, which could affect industry veterans stricken with the disease. And I read that and said, I haven't even read the article yet. But chances are the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund, if it's in Build Back Better, is probably there because Manchin wanted it.
Yeah, he might know.
He might know.
Yeah, and it does lead you
I mean,
to
because
wonder
that's
why
usually
he-
how things work.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't just magically appear that, oh, in Build
Right,
Back Better,
right.
everybody except Joe Manchin is going to remember the coal miners and put that in.
Well, this is what the coal miners wanted. So, yeah, that's true. It's probably in there because of that, because it doesn't build anything in particular. It's not infrastructure, but he gave himself a pass on that one because he wanted it
Or
in there.
people said, I'm putting this in for you, Joe. It's a sweetener,
That could
but I'm
be.
going to tell you I did so that you know it's there. I mean,
Yeah,
so the idea that
that's
he
the
didn't know
only
it's
way
there,
it
I
would
don't
work.
buy that at all.
No, I don't think so. And I also think that in all likelihood, Joe Manchin knows that if you disassemble Build Back Better and start passing, picking out individual pieces to put back into a reconciliation package to win his vote, that's one of the things that'll go in it.
Yeah. And it has to be in a reconciliation package because you're not going to get 10 Republican votes to say okay, because there's this thing called a filibuster, and we get back to that. And the bottom line is Manchin is, was, and always will be the 50th vote. And because he's the 50th vote and not the 51st or 52nd, we're stuck.
Yeah, until we
Just
start
are.
moving
I mean,
people
there's
to
nothing you
Wyoming.
could do about it other than try to win him over. So if he has that much power, well, as Biden says, every senator has that much power in a 50-50 Senate. Manchin more than others because he doesn't care about a lot of the stuff you care about.
Yeah. Well, that's just
That gives him power. Why does he have so much power? Because he doesn't care.
yeah. Which he certainly cares about different things, and senators from different states are supposed to.
Right.
But
And one of the things he cares about is
he's
coal.
kind of a jerk.
It's funny
And
because
it's
people in
both.
West Virginia don't care about coal as much as he does,
There's
but he does.
a lot of them left. There's not that many people actually working in coal in
Well,
West
that's what I
Virginia.
mean.
Yeah,
It's not what it was, but
more people
hey,
have COVID in West Virginia than work in coal.
well, people need child care tax credits.
Yes, but then they'll go spend it on drugs. That's apparently his other big statement for the weekend. I didn't hear him say it. Apparently, it's something he says in private. It's a big scoop in Huffington Post, HuffPo.
Nonetheless, it is what it is. It still is what it still is, and so it's disappointing. It's annoying. It's frustrating. But the numbers are always the numbers, and so it should be not a surprise
That he's doing this is not a surprise.
that he's doing this, and that
Right.
at the same time we still don't know how it's going to turn out. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a summary for now. I'm a lot more worried about COVID than I am about Manchin, and I'm quite worried about how the hospitals are going to fare.
Yeah.
The public doesn't see it, but medical people are really getting burned out by this,
I
and they're sick and tired of you
believe
not
it.
caring.
I don't care. No,
Yeah, exactly. But you will if you have to go to the hospital and there's no room for you.
Yeah, all people, all throughout the medical chain of events. I can't find enough home tests where the people who are supposed to be putting these on the shelves.
Something
they all
must
have
be going
Omicron.
on here.
Right. There's a lot happening, and this is my big worry about it. But I'll be very interested to see whether the Omicron spike drops as quickly here as it has elsewhere, given how many stupid people.
It might, and that turned out to be in the end good news long term.
Yes, I hope.
But short term, it's really going to be difficult.
Yeah, and all right, well, one more big spike to get through for the medical workers, and it's also got to be quite disturbing for them to know, because they're actual medical workers, that this is also a way of they might not be able to get through without getting infected as well. And,
Well, yeah.
Although they have high hopes.
Which
of-
is why they wear those
Yeah.
face shields and goggles.
I guess that's it. Yeah. Man. Well, I hope they work because, you don't want to top this whole thing. Imagine fighting this thing for 2 years and begging people to do all the right things, and they still won't, and they get sick, and you're dealing with it in one more wave, and this is a giant wave. But then you get it on top of all that, even though you're vaccinated with all your full series, and you still have to say, I'm going to be fine, but I'm going to be, I might be in bed for 3 days when I need to be elsewhere. Or I might be in bed for 3 days during Christmas when I meant to be downstairs with the kids. I was going to be off, but now it's ruined.
Or living in the car,
Yeah. Oh, Yeah, to avoid giving the kids COVID at Christmas too. Right.
Well,
Merry
they
Christmas.
get in
Here
the
you
car, or I do. I guess it's me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Unless you don't like your kids, in which case they can go in the car.
Here you go, COVID for you. Herd immunity in this house because I don't like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Bad news.
let me
All
end
right.
this with a completely different topic, but I always like to leave everybody on a positive thought. Remember David K. Johnston? He's been on the show at least once.
Yeah, sure.
A very good investigative reporter. He thinks Trump's about to be indicted in New York for racketeering, which is
Sure, why
nice.
not?
And Adam Kinzinger thinks the January 6th committee's, according to this piece, effectively conducting a criminal investigation into Trump. It's effectively doing it. And again, gets back to that
Well, all right.
whole concept about,
hope so.
noting that he's corruptly interfering with the government process.
Yes, that became a big issue at the end of the week in particular, with some interesting rulings in the court system. We did go over that, and that's so. Yeah, what is Adam Kinzinger saying? Is that? Let me look on the list. Does he have a special place in our list, or?
No, but let's. He was talking to Jake Tapper. Let me give you the reference here.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see if we think the same thing
There
about
it
what's
is.
going on. I wouldn't mind
The
having.
headline is Kinzinger says January 6 panels investigating Trump's involvement in insurrection.
Oh, well, that seems more obvious. But okay, good.
Right.
Thank you for saying so.
Kinzinger also declined Sunday to confirm or deny something I don't know if you talked about, an exclusive report from CNN that members of the panel believe former Texas governor and Trump Energy Secretary Rick Perry
No, I haven't.
was the author of a text message sent to the then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows pushing an aggressive strategy
Huh.
for 3 state legislators to ignore the will of their voters and deliver their state's electors. Perry's office denied he did it. Then they asked, well, how come it came from his phone? They had no answer to that. And the other thing is that aggressive was spelled wrong, making everybody think, oh, yeah, this is Perry.
Well, yeah.
Didn't you mean
know,
Scott Perry, that Republican Pennsylvania guy who's been in the middle of... No, this is Rick Perry. He spelled it wrong.
Wow. I mean, I thought we were done with Rick Perry, so that's really amazing. That's news, and I like that we weren't. I didn't think they were going to ask us that one. I didn't do it. Well, how come it came from your phone? God, dear, why didn't you tell me it came from my phone?
I'm sorry, missed that person. Didn't get me prepped for that one.
Oh my God, what a dummy. Well, that would be tough to answer. I do admit that this is no answer for that. Then how come I didn't do it? Well, then how come you did?
Oh, these committee hearings aren't going to be anything. They're going to be great.
That's pretty good. Well, I mean,
Remember,
we
you
were
don't get
done.
Jim Jordan jumping on the table trying to interrupt it. You just get question after question after question like this.
I mean, Rick Perry, you were free. Everybody forgot, and you stuck your face in a bear trap. Like, well, I got an idea. Why don't I get myself involved in this crew again, and we'll have an insurrection, and it'll be awesome. Why don't you just quietly go away and wait to run for president in 2000 whatever, eat a couple corn dogs and hang out. But no, that's really astonishing. I mean, he would never have been on my list for let's guess who sent this particular text.
Yeah, Scott Gottlieb is probably the only exception. But basically, if you worked for this guy, you're a bad person.
You are,
bad judgment,
and you were made worse.
Bad everything.
Yeah, everybody died. Everybody's dignity died. Everything. You had none to start with.
CDC was suppressing stuff for political reasons, so they asked on TV, Robert Redfield, "Is that true?" And he said, "Yeah, basically."
Thanks. Okay. Well, I'm glad he's been upfront about it too. But I mean, I guess we all sort of knew it. But yeah, this is the part of the movie where they
did that. It
denied.
broke my heart, but absolutely they did that. They killed you all for political reasons. It really got me annoyed.
And you wonder whether there's any strategy behind confessing to this stuff. Is it their strategy, like maybe they won't execute me if I just tell them what happened? Or is it like, I know it was a good thing that we did, so I don't mind admitting? I have no idea. They're morally bankrupt. I don't know which terrible reason they have for telling me. How about I refused to do it and I told you when it happened? I mean, he's not saving it for a book, but he also didn't tell anybody. Maybe he has got a book now. I don't know. Well, we'll look out for it. If Redfield has a book, then we know the answer.
Right. Well, that's your summary
Phew.
for today.
Wow.
So I'll talk to you Wednesday.
Okay, that's a good summary. And yeah, all right, everybody, take care until Wednesday and listen to Greg's advice and make sure you don't cough on everybody and cover your eyes, but not while you're driving. And you'll make it to Wednesday for the next update. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. I don't know. Let's see. You can. Anything else you want to sneak in? No, I guess not. Okay. Text me if you come up with anything else, so that'll be fine, and we can jump into this. Let me take a look at this article that he sent me from CNN here. And we got, so Kinzinger says, January 6th panels investigating Trump's, a thumbs up from production staff. You got a booster. Where'd you go? Giant. Okay, just went to the supermarket, did a walk-in. How long did you wait? 5-10 minutes. All right, so everybody in the world, come to our Giant or go to your own Giant. So it's that easy. That's a great test too. No appointment made. Just sort of, she had a dentist appointment and said, on the way back from the dentist, what if I go to the supermarket and ask for a shot? 5 minutes.
Harris Teeter, no, but Giant, yes.
Harris Teeter, no. Giant, yes. Harris Teeter, very, very fancy, and they wanted you to do it through the catering department. Okay, so that is good news.
Yeah.
All right, we can all digest that. So I made an appointment and it didn't matter. She made no appointment and that didn't matter. So I guess it doesn't matter. And I guess the thing to do is, if you can, go during the weekday, in the middle of the day when other people are otherwise busy, and you have a better chance at waiting less time. I went to a Costco pharmacy where it's always crowded at one point and asked how long, and they were like, I don't know, could be hours. And it was weekend or late in the day, and everybody was out and they were there with their kids. So that's bad strategy. If you can make it, go during the day, but if you can't, bring a book and a mask and maybe goggles and sit and wait, and you'll get boosted by the end of the day. They want to give these shots out. So that's good news. When we return, I'll take a look at this thing from Adam Kinzinger. Thanks again to Greg, and we'll be right back. All right, you can hear in the background, we are microwaving some more booster shots. They've been in the deep freeze, so we've got some right out of the freezer. We're microwaving them to warm them up to give to the kids. Not what we're really doing. Don't worry about it. YouTube, don't get excited about it. We all went out and two of us went out and got the vaccine. So, great. I don't know. So anyway, that should encourage anybody else who's listening and worrying about it. Maybe you just go. I mean, yeah, I spent a long time trying to do the appointment thing because it looked online like everybody really, really, really wanted you to do an appointment. And I guess they all wish that. But basically, they're also very interested in getting the shots in people's arms, but not at least not at our particular Harris Teeter anyway. It has a lot to do with, I think, the way the stores manage things, and everybody's making their own choices. But it sounds like maybe the Omicron wave has changed a lot of minds in terms of how to instruct their pharmacy to react. That's possible, too. Anyway, it's good news if you have been pondering a booster for whatever reason and delaying or worrying about making an appointment and not finding one. Just go and see what you can do.
Yeah, like if you're in
Hey, go ahead.
supermarket with the
What the hell do I
pharmacy,
need a
you
show
want
for?
all your customers to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, and I also noticed I got this other note from Monica here, Dr. Monica, is saying that we got a booster appointment for my daughter in Walmart in Virginia on Sunday. And couldn't find anything sooner in Maryland. They're in Maryland, I guess, and so they found one in Virginia, and we noticed a lot of people there for vaccines, which is also good news. Again, the anecdotal evidence of going to the supermarket and going to a different supermarket than I usually go to, or going to the Walmarts, it's good news for the demographics of the shot. The message of the booster, the message of the full series getting out to everybody if the Walmarts are crowded too. Because I would imagine that, the bulk of vaccine-resistant Trumpers are also spending a lot of time at Walmart. So if there's a crowd at any Walmart, I would say Walmart probably skews the most anti-vax. That's a total guess, and I guess slander against Walmart, but probably true anyway. But it's good news that they're crowded. But again, as Monica was saying, there's a lot of people there for the vaccines, and they told us to walk around the store for 15 minutes afterwards because it was so crowded. That is to say, there's no chairs. The first couple times, like the first two shots of the vaccine, I went to the county's official government site, right? The government site for vaccination. And that is strictly appointment only, and still is, as far as I know. Although I guess if you show up, I don't know what happens if you show up and try to go in. But they say on their website, we're appointment only. There are no walk-ins for this. But they're a big operation, and, they got the ropes like Disneyland, and you're in a line, and you go to this one and that one, and there's stations, and they must have, I don't know, when we were in there, they might have had, I don't know, 50 to 100 vaccination stations set up. Not all of them were manned at all times, but when they were really hopping, they had, I don't know, 50 people giving vaccines at any given time. And then you had these vast seas of chairs for us to wait in, and they had clocks running, so you could time 15 minutes. They were very official because the government was doing it, I guess. And they had set this up, by the way, in the empty one of the anchor stores of the local mall that had closed. Was it? I don't remember which store it was. Was it Neiman Marcus that used to be? What? I don't know. Anyway, one of the Nordstrom, right? The other expensive one, not quite as expensive as Neiman Marcus. We don't have one, I guess, Neiman Marcus. Anyway, Nordstrom was closed, and so they emptied out all the fixtures. It was a big department store working on both floors of the department store, and they were all just this sea of vaccine stations and a sea of chairs to sit in, and they were very insistent that you sit and wait 15 minutes. And at the retail stores that are still operating, of course, they can't just empty out all the merchandise and all the shelves and have vast seas of chairs. They're working stores. So they tend to tell you, so for Monica, they said, walk around the store for 15 minutes so that if you pass out here and you're our problem, which is very nice of them to do. And at Safeway, they were like, do what you want, get lost. I don't know if they knew we were shopping, but the store managers, I think, from speaking to the pharmacist at Safeway, it sounded like the store managers had in mind that people would walk around the store for 15 minutes and that they might shop. I don't know if that's really the case. I think people's minds are elsewhere. I guess it's possible in Walmart because sometimes it'll take you just 15 minutes to get to the registers from wherever you are. But I just couldn't imagine walking around. I guess you could walk around and say, what if I get lightheaded? Maybe I should buy oranges and some juice and cookies or something. But I can't imagine walking around and saying, it's 2 for 1 on, Head and Shoulders anti-dandruff shampoo. I should just get that while I'm here. Whatever it is. I don't know, do they sell that? I have no idea. That might be off the market for 100 years or so. But it's a good idea, have people milling about, and maybe they want pork rinds while they're waiting. I would. So, anyway, back to Adam Kinzinger after this successful story of walk-in vaccine uptake. I like that. Adam Kinzinger says that the January 6th panel is investigating Trump's involvement in insurrection, which, while good news, is a headline that reads to me like, well, duh, they better be. What else would they be up to? But technically speaking, up to this point, they've been investigating everyone else's role in the insurrection, it does strike you as crazy because, come on, the chief insurrectionist was Donald Trump. He did the most to drive it. People did it because they thought he was asking. I mean, they've investigated everybody else, and, we have this person's text and that person's text, and what about Laura Ingraham? But I have not heard anybody say that they were in D.C. on January 6th and storming the Capitol on Laura Ingraham's orders. Everybody knows that they were there for Trump. So, duh, of course. But now the point is that I think what this means is they've progressed to the point where they have built enough of a case against the other people and gotten enough people on the record to give them the factual and evidentiary basis to now start moving up the chain towards Donald Trump, which ordinarily would be a tremendous task, but he keeps confessing to things. So maybe it will move a little faster. Here's what he had to say specifically. Representative Adam Kinzinger, he's a Republican, don't forget that, said Sunday, the House panel investigating the January 6th Capitol insurrection is looking into whether former President Donald Trump committed a crime, specifically not just that he was responsible for it, but that what he did was criminal in nature, like according to statute, with his involvement in the deadly riot. Just to clarify here, by the way, they're reporting on Kinzinger's exchange with Jake Tapper, but it is Daniela Diaz who wrote up the exchange here in what I'm reading. I don't want to go there yet to say, do I believe he has committed a crime? I mean, I can't wait to go there. Let me go. I'll go. But he doesn't want to go there yet because he's a Republican, maybe, or he's just being cautious. Do I believe he has committed a crime? I'm not ready to say that. But I think that's obviously a pretty big thing to say. That's actually a question, a big thing to ask. We want to know, though, and I think we'll, by the end of our investigation and by the time our report is out, have a pretty good idea. Kinzinger, who represents part of Illinois, told CNN's Jake Tapper on State of the Union. That's how you know that this is written up on CNN. They make a big point of plugging the show from 9 to 11 on Sundays. I don't know when it's on. But anyway, we'll be able to have out on the public record anything the Justice Department needs, maybe in pursuit of that, said Kinzinger. That's a little less clear about what he's talking about. Anyway, he's one of the two Republican members of the committee. He continued, so look, here's the thing with the report. January 6th is a very important day. Okay. We will get every bit of detail that we can possibly get on that. What I think is almost more important is what led up to January 6th. Good point, good question. What is the rot in the democracy that allowed the 6th to happen? And have we corrected from that since? No. There's your answer to that. The bipartisan House committee has been probing the attack on the Capitol earlier this year. Yeah, I found that out just recently, including Trump's involvement in this episode. While still in office, the House impeached Trump for inciting the riot, though he was later acquitted by the Senate in a vote that took place after his tenure ended. Not that it matters. I just want you to know that. Kinzinger also declined Sunday to confirm or deny an exclusive report from CNN that members of the panel believe former Texas governor and Trump energy secretary and Dancing with the Stars contestant Rick Perry was the author of the text message sent to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows the day after the 2020 election, pushing an, quote, aggressive, misspelled, strategy for 3 state legislatures to ignore the will of their voters and deliver their state electors to Trump. No matter the number of texts that are coming out or what people have been saying, and you kind of get a peek into the window of their world, Kinzinger said. No matter all the number. I think we have to sometimes step back and say, I do believe there are probably some real kind of did we break the law questions here. But even bigger than that, in my mind, is what does that say about the future of democracy if we do truly believe in it, or is it all about win at any cost? It's a little scattered, but I think we get the point of what he's saying here. The congressman also said he thought it was important for the public to see the truth after the committee last week released some text messages Meadows received from members of Congress and others. We have a trail of Mark Meadows being aware now of what was happening at the Capitol. Not just, maybe I knew, maybe I watched the news and everyone may know that wasn't true, but now you have proof of it, Kinzinger said. People desperately pleading for him to get the president to be involved because the president, for something like 182 minutes, Nobody heard from them. Nobody knew what he was up to, despite this being all over the news. And we know he watches the news. Yeah, that's definitely true. And the thing that had struck me about this 182 minutes thing, as I started to think about it, and people started to put together memes that made it easy to think about, comparing him to George W. Bush whiling away the time after the World Trade Center had been hit by the hijacked planes, and just sort of sitting there and staring off into the distance while supposedly reading with the kids. And while there was the excuse of maybe we don't want to panic the kids, although how much panic could there really be? What were the kids going to do? You know, they're going to go out and join the army? I mean, they were going to be upset, but anyway. So bad optics, I guess, there to make the kids cry by saying, kids, country's under attack. But still, that, and of course flying around and not really being sure of whether or not to come back to Washington, D.C., and just sort of generally not taking the reins very quickly and doing something about it. And that side by side with the picture, the mental picture that we're stuck with, we don't have actual pool reporter photos of it, of Trump enjoying the insurrection on television and snacking while the cops were being attacked and beaten and democracy being destroyed over at the Capitol, and doing nothing about it, just enjoying the teleplay. And just thinking about that and like side by siding those two things, and like how long, by the way, how many more people are going to be fooled with the notion that the Republicans are the national security party that takes national security seriously, the daddy party that takes care of all of us, and you know will aggressively fight for what's right. There's maybe the two biggest crises of foreign and domestic politics, both with images of presidents either paralyzed and unsure of how to proceed, or actually enjoying the horrible news on television, and sitting there and doing nothing. You know, don't take the bait again. These guys don't know what they're doing with national security. All right, let's see other things to catch up on in Pocket and things that happened on Twitter over the weekend, and there were a lot. I mentioned at some point, I don't know if I put it aside even in Pocket or anything, but I mentioned earlier that I had been somewhat perturbed by Mark Warner, one of my own senators, tweeting over the weekend about, hey, you know, so, as though he were just, you know, some rank and file Democratic activist or Democratic voter hanging out there pondering things that they don't usually spend a great deal of time thinking about, and saying, hey, if we could make an exception to the filibuster for the debt ceiling, then why can't we do it for voting rights? And well, Greg had said, well, he's right, but he's only right in a very limited sense, and it's just kind of annoying to watch senators do this when they know that, you know, I mean, they have a better idea than most, I think, about what was actually going on here. And luckily, we here on this show, and listeners to this show are able to recognize this stuff and know what's going on. But again, gentle reminder that the carve out for the debt ceiling happened because Republicans wanted it to happen. They wanted very much to engineer a workaround around the filibuster because they didn't want the United States ultimately to default on its debts, because they knew the seriousness of the consequences there. But they also didn't want to be seen voting to raise the debt ceiling. So instead what they did was make it possible. They voted affirmatively for a procedure that would allow a time limit to be placed on the debate for the debt ceiling, which has the effect of getting around the filibuster. So they could say, well, I voted for a particular procedure. I thought it was important. I know it's important that we not default on the debt, but I do think it's important that Republicans would say, I think it's important that Democrats take responsibility for the debt, even though, as we all know, raising the debt ceiling is about meeting the obligations of spending that were previously made rather than borrowing money ahead of time for more spending later. So, the responsibility that needed to be taken for raising the debt ceiling really belonged with the Republicans, but they were doing everything they could to duck it. So they said, okay, you can have a time limit on the debate for raising the debt ceiling, which we all know will have the effect of eliminating the filibuster, at least for this particular single vote. We're okay with doing that, and we'll even decline to filibuster the bill that imposes the time limit so that later on we can say we didn't vote on the actual raising of the debt ceiling. We voted no. They voted yes. You should blame them. Very complicated procedure. We worked our way through it. But, I say it's complicated because I guess for most people, they're like, that's mind-numbingly complicated. I think we got our heads around it pretty well. And to me, it makes a certain amount of sense because I just, I follow the instructions one by one by one. You got it. So to me, it makes sense. But what bothers me is that Mark Warner pretends to not understand what was going on here so that he can rah-rah cheerlead for people and say, well, why, if we made an exception for the debt ceiling, why can't we do the same for voting rights? And, it's bothersome because there are a lot of people who say, yeah, that makes sense. Why can't you? And in one sense, we want people asking that so that they can pressure Democrats to do this. But again, a reminder, this procedure can't be used again for this, except under some very unique circumstances. But what you could do, it certainly is the case that if you could get Manchin and Sinema on board, you could, in fact, just straight up write a carve-out from the filibuster for voting rights. You could do that, but you're asking, if we make an exception, why can't we do it again for voting rights legislation? But why are you asking me that? Why don't you ask Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema that? And the reason is because they'll tell you, no, you can't, because we're going to vote no on it. But this specific procedure that they used, no, you can't use it for voting rights again. And the answer to your question is, why can't we use it for voting rights legislation? Because Republicans won't let you. So don't get too excited about having carved out a procedure or having succeeded in finding a way to raise the debt ceiling, even though the filibuster stood in your way. This was a gift that Republicans handed you for a number of reasons. And by the way, one of the minor reasons for handing you this gift is so that Democratic activists would ask this question and try to pressure Democratic senators to do the same, even though that option isn't really available to them. And that was meant to frustrate everybody. Maybe Warner has found a way to disarm that, or thinks he has, by just repeating the same thing, even though the answer is, we can't. I don't know how to explain to you why we can't, because I'm not paying attention. But you're asking this question, so am I. You see, we're on the same side, and yet still nothing gets done. So, I don't know. I guess that's just politics. That's just hiding from the question. I understand, I guess, why Warner's doing it, but I guess I hoped for more. Like, why wouldn't Warner take a moment, if he's going to be on Twitter, how about explaining to people why that procedure can't be used, and the fact that this was a Republican concession, and that, why not take the opportunity to say, yeah, we beat the Republicans on this. They didn't want to get caught being blamed for economic meltdown, so they did what we said they would do. They got out of the way of the filibuster. They went around the block the other direction in order to try to make it look like they didn't do this, but they did do it, and we got them, and we won. And what it means is, in order to use this same sort of procedure again, that you got to remember, Republicans allowed this to happen, and they did it because they were afraid of the consequences of failing to pass a debt ceiling increase. Debt ceiling increase fails to pass, economic meltdown, they would be blamed, or even if they weren't blamed, it would happen, and it would be disastrous for everybody, no matter where you place the blame. And they were afraid of that. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you wanted to use the same procedure again, if Mark Warner is asking this question, why can't we do the same for voting rights legislation? Then you got to set it up the same way. In order to use this same procedure again, you, Mark Warner, or I guess we, the people at large, somebody's got to do this, but you're going to need to find a way to make Republicans fear the consequences of failing to pass voting rights. Right now, they relish the consequences of failing to pass voting rights. And I guess what I'd tell you is, here, that reminds me very much of, brings me to the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. many years ago, because it has to be many years ago, because he's been dead these many years, because he was murdered by the people who keep bringing him up and saying, why can't we all be more like him? Anyway, this particular line that people who don't, I guess people who don't go any further than I have a dream never tend to hear. A riot is the language of the unheard, he was saying, when explaining the large contingent of black Americans at the time who didn't necessarily subscribe to his philosophy of nonviolence, and who thought perhaps violence might get something done, or not necessarily that they cared particularly what violence got done, but they just said, too frustrated to deal in nonviolence, going to lash out in violence. And so explaining why people riot, he was saying, riot is the language of the unheard, right? If you continue to deny the very basic humanity of people in large numbers, they're going to lash out. I won't always be able to convince them. He did say as part of that discussion, it'll be with my last breath that I tell them nonviolence is the way. And even if everybody was against me on that, I would still say that nonviolence was the way, and the courage of his conviction, certainly. But he recognized, but I also might be overpowered or outvoted. And there are a lot of people who will say, my voice is just never heard. There's no nonviolent way. Those people will riot. And that's what made people afraid. And quite honestly, that was what overcame the obstacles then. It wasn't that they didn't filibuster civil rights. It was that I think at the time that the opponents of civil rights came to fear the consequences of not passing it. And they might need to be brought to fear the consequences again. I guess what makes it different and what makes it seem so unlikely is they're intransigent right now about that. And maybe they're intransigent about it because circumstances has changed, right? Back to the riot being the language of the unheard. Okay, true. But on the other hand, having access to an AR-15, for instance, might lead one to believe, perhaps right up until the last minute when you find out you're wrong, but right up until that point, you believe a riot can't touch you. I'm not afraid of the consequences of not passing civil rights and voting rights legislation, because what's the consequence of not doing it? A riot? Oh, and what's the problem with a riot? They come and they burn your house down or steal all your stuff or kill you and your family. Well, I have an AR-15 and I'll kill them all first, and they'll go run away. And I think possibly, depending on the scale of the riot and the frustrations that are being expressed that way and the nature of them and how many people have those frustrations and where you are and where they are and how many of them there are and how many of you there are, it is possible, I imagine, certainly in the heroic, in your mind, what passes for heroic scene that you envision, the mob descends on your home and you brandish the AR-15 or maybe even shoot a couple people and everybody runs away screaming, and they go and ransack the house of your neighbor who doesn't have an AR-15, and you're happy about that because to you that means your decision to buy the AR-15 and then shoot people was validated. But remember, this is just your fantasy, and it might not be the way it comes out, and it might be the case that they say, to hell with it, he can't shoot all of us fast enough to make a difference. Some of us will make it and some of us won't, but now we're pissed and this guy has got to get torn to pieces, and he will. Well, I guess if that happens a couple of times, and I don't advocate that it does, and it's an unpleasant thing to talk about for sure, but that's the basic reality underlying the political science of it, right? I mean, if you're going to bring people to fear the consequences of failing to pass voting rights, it's got to be because they think the only way out of getting everything that they know and love destroyed is, well, we're just going to have to allow people to have their voice after all and maybe appeal to them on a more rational level and see if they'll vote for us. Well, make them afraid. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. The latest, just shouting that out to the production staff here. Let's see, the latest one to catch the old virus here, which makes me think, yeah, we're all going to have this huge spike after all. Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland has got a positive test here. I don't know if he had to fly to Korea to pick up one of these tests and get them back here or what. That was what he had to do with the PPE. But anyway, he's the latest to join the parade of big names. And maybe now this is maybe like what substitutes for president basketball last time. People were watching the NBA. The NBA shut down. They took it seriously. Maybe watching the big political names come down with it one after the other will be what does something. So Larry Hogan now among the group who has contracted the virus. Let me park that in pocket so I have it for you for the summary later on. Where were we? There were a million other things that I wanted to read to you about. And one of them, here's some news too. How about this one? This wasn't in Pocky yet, but again, I saw it over the break. What a brilliant idea. Why didn't anybody else ever think of this? Greg mentioned to you that there was a possibility of a criminal probe of Trump happening in New York as the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, turns her sights on him. Well, Trump has fixed it. Trump sues the New York Attorney General in an attempt to stop the inquiry into his business. Well, that's the answer for everybody. Why don't all criminals just stop the Attorney General by suing them? The Attorney General, Letitia James, is seeking to question the former president under oath next month as part of a long-running investigation. That's the subheader here. Jonah Bromwich, Ben Protas, and William Rashbaum reporting here for the New York Times. Donald J. Trump filed a lawsuit on Monday, that's today, against the New York State Attorney General. And by the way, nothing frightens an Attorney General like a lawsuit being filed against them. It's sort of like, I sort of deal in lawsuits all the time, and I get sued all the time, and I have lots of resources to deal with it. It's like literally costless to me to dispense with your lawsuit. But okay. Donald J. Trump filed a lawsuit on Monday against the New York State Attorney General Letitia James, seeking to halt her long-running civil investigation into his business practices. That is a little different. The suit, filed in federal court in upstate New York by Mr. Trump and his family real estate business, argues that Ms. James's inquiry, which has lasted more than 2 years, longer than COVID, has violated Mr. Trump's consummate and institutional rights. You understand? No. Mr. Trump and his lawyers have long argued that the investigation was politically motivated. The lawsuit asks the judge to agree, well, I don't, and to stop the investigation. Her mission is guided solely by political animus and desire to harass, intimidate, and retaliate against a private citizen who she views as a political opponent, the suit reads, except for the first 2 years of the thing, you were the president of the United States. Anyway, a spokesman for Ms. James did not immediately reply to a request for comment. If Ms. James were to find evidence of wrongdoing, she could file a lawsuit against Mr. Trump because it is a civil inquiry. She could not file criminal charges, but somebody else could. Mr. Trump's lawsuit comes less than 2 weeks after Ms. James signaled that she would seek to question Mr. Trump under oath, Mr. Oath, I should say, because it's the New York Times, early next month. At the time, Mr. Trump's lawyers said that they would ask a judge to quash the subpoena, that's the word for it, and they are still expected to do so in the coming days. A lawyer for Mr. Trump, Alina Habba, another lawyer, God, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The developments in the civil investigation come during a critical phase of a separate criminal investigation into the former president being conducted by Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. Yeah, okay. We shouldn't confuse them. That investigation is centered on whether Mr. Trump defrauded lenders by inflating the value of his assets. Ms. James's office is also assisting in the criminal investigation, so there is some overlap here. Vance leaves office. He's Mr. Vance, but I'm going to stop with that. Vance leaves office at the end of the year and has not yet signaled whether his investigation, which also focuses on Trump's business practices, will be handed to his successor, Alvin Bragg. It's really up to his successor, I would guess. James's civil investigation began in March of 2019, and she is focused on some of the same aspects of Trump's business as Vance. And that's it. Anyway, I guess the big news is, I know what I'll do. I'll sue her, and then she'll stop. Well, probably not. But okay, moving on. Other things that were in pocket that I wanted to share. Let's see. Oh, right. I have the HuffPost story to share with you later of Joe Manchin privately told colleagues that parents use child tax credit money on drugs. Well, that was very nice of you. And Senator Manchin, the 1980s are on the line, and they want their BS about welfare queens back. But I saw a lot of people protesting what Manchin's been up to and saying there should be different actions, suggesting different things. I think Joan actually was suggesting, what if we all get together and get a big load of coal and dump it on his boat, which, well, he probably wouldn't like that very much. That's true. Although, he's in the coal business. He might just say, awesome, coal. Like if you put coal in his stocking, he'll be like, great, I'll sell it. So I'm not certain that it's the same problem for him that it is for the rest of us. And I don't know how you get the truck onto the boat. So I don't know. You have to drop it by helicopter. Very expensive proposition. We could, of course, just all go to his boat and lob, I don't know what, what's indicative of the 80s, leg warmers and bebops or something, and throw them up there, and hair scrunchies. I don't know, some 80s things, and play 80s hits outside of his boat. That's something you can do. Bring your own 80s boombox and put it on your kayak and sit outside his boat and just play loud 80s music. Because honestly, this idea that, we can't give a social safety net to people because they'll just use it on drugs, which, ironically enough, is what I've always worried that rich people were doing with their tax cuts. They keep saying we're job creators. If you give us a tax cut, we'll create more jobs. But of course, we know that jobs means giving that money away to other people. It's not that they're going to create jobs. It's that they might buy themselves fancy stuff. The jobs they're creating is at the factories where they build the fancy stuff that they want to buy with their money. They don't give that money away to other people, generally speaking, unless, of course, they think they can make more money with that and withhold that from people. Anyway, and by the way, I would guess that with some greater frequency, the very rich to whom we give away these enormous tax cuts probably actually are buying drugs with it. Of course, some of those people got rich by selling drugs to other people. That's true. But anyway, my guess is that at a higher rate, anyway, there's probably more ultra-wealthy people enjoying their tax cuts in the form of drugs than there are poor people who are making decisions between food and drugs and picking drugs. Anyway, Joe Manchin apparently privately told people that, and that should upset all of you, and it's rather ridiculous. It's dated, and of course everybody else pointing out that, I guess if Joe Manchin's drug of choice are yachts and Maseratis, then it's not that much more helpful for him to be using his money on the up and up, so to speak, than other people. At least with the, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if I don't know if I can come up with an argument why it's better to buy drugs with your money than Maseratis. But buying Maseratis isn't helping anybody either. So anyway, now you'll have the source for that. You can read and get annoyed about that statement or the alleged statement that Manchin made in private to his colleagues at your leisure. let's see, other fun information. Oh, we might have to look into this at some point. But foreign news, there was a big deal made because apparently a lot of people in Chile found it to be a big deal themselves. I have a piece here from The Guardian, which we should all read perhaps again on our own time just to keep up with events here. Left-winger to become Chile's youngest president. That's news all by itself. But after beating a far-right rival, the former student leader Gabriel Boric, I don't know whether he gives a ch to the C and his end of his name. Not a typical Hispanic surname as I view it, B-O-R-I-C, but there are a lot, big immigrant community down in Chile. So, maybe it's a European last name. But anyway, he has claimed 55.8% of the vote, by the way, which is an enormous landslide, and defeated far-right opponent Jose Antonio Cast, K-A-S-T, another European surname. Anyway, not only Chile's youngest president, but, like we said, left-wing and running against, and as they describe him here in The Guardian, ultra-conservative far-right opponent. And that's something that has been cause for celebration, apparently. Large numbers of people out in the streets celebrating and demonstrating. I'm surprised that the Trump supporters haven't claimed that these things are going on here in the United States in support of Donald Trump. But this right-wing opponent who was defeated was apparently sort of like, a throwback to like real Pinochet-style right-winger. So I can see why the cause for celebration in Chile. If you don't like being thrown out of helicopters for opposing the government, you'll be pleased with this news. So anyway, just kind of mentioning that, yeah, I take note of that, but I'm way behind on what's happening in Chile, and perhaps I'll catch up, and maybe you will too. Chile and catch up, by the way, good combination. Other fun things to catch up on. Let's see, where else do we have here? I'll just note in passing, mostly in passing because I have run out of articles at The Atlantic, and I won't have any more until New Year's, about 2 weeks from now. But John B. Washington, supposedly, at least according to the pocket view of The Atlantic article, has written delivers this news that the skeleton of Trump's border wall is rusting in the desert. I thought that was kind of funny too. There's big sections of those slatted fences that he had built are laying in piles out in the desert, and hundreds or tens of thousands, I should say, of heavy steel slats once destined to become part of former President Donald Trump's border wall are slowly rusting in the open air throughout the southwestern borderlands. The bollards, 18 or 33-foot-long hollow posts, most of them reinforced with concrete and rebar, are worth at least $250 million. So go out there and get them, I guess. The Department of Defense owns most of that steel. That's useful. But it's unclear what will or can be done with it. For now, it remains in spider-webbed stacks, sunning themselves in vast staging areas along the wall. Interesting. And I guess, by the way, the fact that they're lying down, I don't think has all that much to do with the fact that they're rusting away. I guess they were going to rust away even had they been made into a wall, which maybe speaks to the quality of the merchandise we've bought here. Like, would the wall just have rusted and fallen over at some point? I don't know. He says slowly rusting. Maybe it's so slow that it won't even matter. Anyway, President Joe Biden persistently campaigned on a clean break from the policies of the Trump administration. Perhaps in no other field did Trump's critics hope for swifter and more complete reversals than in immigration and border policy. Those hopes have been dashed. Despite many promises, the Biden administration has effectively locked in and in some cases even expanded draconian anti-immigration measures implemented by Trump. The wall was supposed to be an easy change, but halting a project of this scale is never easy. In the last months of the Trump administration, construction crews were rushing, sometimes working around the clock, to erect more miles of wall. Within sight of Guadalupe Canyon, in the southeastern corner of Arizona, land made up of rounded buttes and steep canyons, critical habitat, by the way, for jaguars, another endangered cross-border species. Crews were dynamite blasting into mountainsides in order to do so, as the chant went, "Build the wall." But anyway, all has come to a standstill, though I did see the other day that Governor Greg Abbott in Texas had a big wall building event in which they put up like a 30-foot section of wall and walked away. So people will be walking around that. It's like erecting, a monolith or Stonehenge in the way of the border. Oh, well, there's a piece of crap in my way. I guess I'll go around it. But as he was saying, since no one else would build the wall, we'll do it. We'll take care of it. We'll build the wall ourselves. Which, interesting sentiment. But just since we have our economics student home with us now, I'll just point out that why would anyone else do anything about building the wall if you're doing it? If Texas says we'll take on the expense of building the wall, who else is going to do it? And who else is going to join in building it? Nobody. Why? Why bother? Economics tells me I should put my effort elsewhere. Texas is going to do it. So, like we said, we're going to build the wall and Mexico is going to pay for it. By which I mean we're not going to build the wall and Texas is going to pay for it. So, it works out pretty well from my perspective. I don't really, I was going to say I don't care whether the wall gets built or not. I do. I don't want the wall built. But if it's going to be built, I guess let it be built ineffectively, slowly, with poor materials at great cost, paid for by someone else. Is that sufficient? Okay. I mean, I just that's my favorite strategy. Anyway, I wanted to make you aware of that. Other things that I wanted to share with you. Let's see. Oh, yes, right. Over the weekend, another Stupid Sunday show moment pointed out to us, as is often the case, by Matt Negrin on Twitter, who writes that Chuck Todd was asked why he put Roger Marshall, Senator Roger Marshall, an election truther, one of the election deniers, basically, is what he says, on his show last week to deny that Biden won the election. Like, why would you do something like that, Chuck Todd? Why put a senator on to say that Joe Biden didn't win the election and isn't president? And his answer was that Roger Marshall has credibility because he's a senator. That's why I put him on the show. And I know that is sort of the answer that Chuck Todd usually gives. Matt has a different take on this, of course, than saying Chuck Todd is an election denier using Meet the Press to spread the big lie. I'm sure Chuck would deny that was the case. But by way of proof, he offers this screen grab from I don't know where, but highlights this part here. Now, it depends. It's supposed to be Chuck Todd defending himself. There are some elected officials who aren't even worthy of letting them explain the position that they have. But you've got a guy like Roger Marshall, who is a medical doctor, allegedly, who has credibility, trying to fight the vaccine mandate, trying to extend the pandemic. And I always say here, whether you like it or not, it's the voters who make these folks credible because they put them in office. And I understand the point that I guess this is Chuck trying to make, right? Whether I believe them or not is not the issue. The point is that the people of, I don't even know what state Roger Marshall is from. People of this state have entrusted him with this job, and he's credible because he's a senator. I understand that take. I don't really at heart agree with that. I mean, the people of the state can make a terrible mistake, but I understand the idea. They have entrusted him with this constitutional position, and it's important because for now, the Secretary of the Senate is going to continue counting this guy's vote as a senator, so it's important to know where he is mentally and what he's up to. But here's the thing. If the guy is credible, and I guess it doesn't necessarily mean that the things he says are credible. That's one thing. And really, what's the show about? It's about what he says, not the fact that he was there. Otherwise, you would just have no audio. You just show, here's a picture of Roger Marshall being credible here, and as credible as he can be, by the way, with no sound on our show. And we're a credible show because we asked if this senator would come and sit in front of our cameras and look important, and he agreed to do it. So we must be credible too, because he's an important guy. Why would he take time out of his day to appear on our air and not say anything? But that's clearly not the case. It's clearly what he says that is of interest to Chuck Todd. But what he says is that elections aren't trustworthy, and that the so-called winner of an election might in fact not be the winner of elections. And if that's, I don't know whether that's his platform or not, but that's the belief he's coming on the air to express. I guess at some point, don't I have to ask Chuck Todd, you say he's got credibility because he's a senator. Chuck, I know this might seem facetious to you, but how do you know he's a senator? Like, he's only here because he's got credibility, and he's only got credibility because he's been elected to the Senate, right? How do you know he's been elected to the Senate? He's coming here to tell you that elections don't work, that elections can't be trusted, that just because someone says Joe Biden is the president doesn't mean Joe Biden's the president. But he's here as a senator. Well, who says he's a senator? Just because someone says he's a senator. He says he's a senator. You say he's a senator. I say he might not be a senator based on what he's saying. I'm taking him more seriously than you are. What is he doing on the air if he can't prove that he's a senator? And what happens if, after the next set of elections, this particular next set of elections in 2022, when in 2023 a bunch of Republicans think they're taking over the House and the Senate and show up with certificates of election from their various states that say they were elected, what if this vice president does what Mike Pence wouldn't? What if she has the courage, according to Donald Trump, that Mike Pence lacked and says, I don't think you actually do have a valid certificate of election from your state, would-be senator-elect. I'm afraid you're going to have to stand aside. I'm not administering the oath to you. And I guess, though it wouldn't be I guess the Speaker of the House would be doing it here too. But you'd have either a new Speaker of the House, but maybe in the House you'd have to intervene at a different point. And the Clerk of the House, who is, I don't know whether we have a new clerk, whether we hired a new clerk of the House. I guess we did, probably, when Democrats took control of the House. But it will be Nancy Pelosi's hire, presumably, of clerk of the House, taking in all the certificates of election on the House side. So before they even get around to electing a new speaker who would be a Republican, if Republicans claim to have won a majority in the next Congress. But what if the old Democratic clerk says, no, you didn't win a majority here. I don't think your election certificates are correct. Sorry, bye. It's still a Democrat. It would be an outrage, right? But of course, it was exactly the same thing that Trump was proposing for the electoral votes as well. And I don't know. So then maybe we riot and get our way because all the other people, they appear not to be paying much of a price. Although the good news is that there are a lot of people getting heavier sentences these days for their participation in the riot. And Adam Kinzinger says they're building to the crescendo of actually chasing down Trump for his role in it. Anyway, just thought I would bring that one up because I found that was weird and inexplicable for Chuck Todd. Not that he'll be hearing me, but something for you to think about. Okay, let's see. Also in coronavirus news, you would have seen over the weekend, most likely, I don't know anything about the guy, but he made for an interesting story. The Seattle Times, I have here their report on Washington State Senator Doug Erickson, who has died of COVID after having sought treatment for COVID, but also, more importantly, after having spent all of this time being a conspiracy theorist and denialist with respect to COVID. Well, he got it and died. And apparently he caught COVID while in El Salvador, which is also interesting because he's a Washington State senator. I don't know, sometimes they got business elsewhere. El Salvador seems like a strange place to be, but you never know. And although I did wonder whether it's possible the timing is right, that he might have been in El Salvador for their weird, bizarro Bitcoin event. There was like this big press gathering, or gathering of cryptocurrency people in El Salvador, I think, when I guess the government there launched some sort of initiative, and it was supposed to bring some kind of wealth into the country, I guess, I'm sure, where you could use Bitcoin as legal tender for, just regular purchases, at least in some places in El Salvador. I imagine in a certain corner of San Salvador, the capital, that maybe that was realistic and that had been set up for the cameras anyway, and the rest of the country was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I don't know if he was actually there for that, but it seems fitting, like that might have worked. But anyway, for whatever reason, he was in El Salvador, and now he's not anywhere because he's dead. Joseph O'Sullivan and David Gutman reporting for the Seattle Times. State Senator Doug Erickson, a stalwart conservative voice in the legislature, former leader of Donald Trump's presidential campaign in Washington, and an outspoken critic of COVID-19 emergency orders, has died. His family said on Saturday he was 52 years old. It's a tremendous waste, but some people feel it more deeply than I do, let's say. Erickson said last month that he had tested positive for the coronavirus while on a trip to El Salvador, although his cause of death was not immediately confirmed on Saturday. Let's see, the family saying, boo-hoo, keep our family in your prayers. Erickson died Friday, according to the statement. One of the longest-serving members of the current legislature, the Ferndale Republican, earned a reputation as a fierce and unrelenting foe of Democratic policies and Governor Jay Inslee. When a GOP coalition controlled the Senate several years ago, Erickson used his perch as chair of the Senate's Environment Committee to help foil the governor's ambitions on climate change. He went on to become an early backer of Trump's first presidential campaign. Blah, blah, blah. He also had weird side hustles like lobbying for Cambodia or something like that. Anyway, something, he's dead. The end. Add it to the list. But now that bigger, more famous names also have COVID and hopefully won't die because they weren't denialists and they got vaccinated. Anyway, it happened and there it is. Let's see. Other info of some interest. Let's see. I can't remember now. What was it that was so particularly interesting? But I know there was something. I have this vague idea. Oh, yes, right. Oh, yes. The New York man who was sentenced to nearly 3 years in prison for threatening Senator Raphael Warnock was of some interest to me. Subheader says he was a Proud Boys supporter. Edward Floria also posted messages encouraging violence at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. So a real tough guy over the internet. Dara Gregorian reported it this way. He's been sentenced to nearly 3 years in prison on Thursday for making threats against Raphael Warnock. He's 41 years old and pleaded guilty in August to posting statements online threatening to kill Warnock, as well as illegally possessing ammunition. Floria, a Proud Boys supporter from Queens, posted threats against Warnock, of all people, and other elected officials on January 5th and 6th, the day a pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. And let's see, he said such genius things as, "Dead men can't pass S-word laws." Floria wrote of Warnock on a January 6th message posted to Parler, which just basically means you should be arrested offhand. But this is an interesting thing. As the January 6th attack unfolded, Floria posted messages saying, "We need to regroup outside of D.C. and attack from all sides." And another that said, "Guns cleaned and loaded. Got a bunch of guys all armed and ready to deploy." Ooh, deploy. That's like a tactical word and everything. Meanwhile, he's doing this from Queens. The riot is going on in Washington, D.C., and he says, "We need to regroup outside of D.C." You're in Queens. But guess what? He decided to go down there. But again, guns cleaned and loaded. Let's deploy. Well, it says here, government lawyers said Floria's wife told the FBI he, quote, was in a frenzy to join the attack, and that he had armed himself with knives. So, like, where happened to all the guns that were cleaned and loaded? Well, I'll take the knives. But he armed himself with knives to travel to Washington, D.C., but that his planned ride did not pick him up. So there's where you are with the Proud Boys supporters from Queens. We got to regroup. We got to clean the guns and deploy. We got guys ready to go. Arm yourselves. Let's attack from all sides. Where's those guns I cleaned? I don't know. I can't find them. Give me some kitchen knives. I'm on my way to D.C. just as soon as, what? My neighbor picks me up. Uber comes over. The bus comes by. I don't know. I can't get myself there because he's so... Where's his Humvee? Why is he not flying his Apache helicopter to Washington, D.C.? Anyway, eminently mockable, but now eminently lockupable as well. So we got that. That's good news. And now this.
From networksradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this selection today. There's much, much more, of course, but that's why we have Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next. Well, we have that for independent reasons. Like, Justice feels like doing the show, and he runs the place, and he can do whatever the hell he wants. And guess what he's doing? He's doing just that, and bringing you the stories, some that which we missed, and some just for the hell of it.